Hi, everybody. This is David Nevins for Citybiz List. And today we continue our series of conversations on behalf of the Bridge Alliance, which we're calling Repairing America's Broken Democracy. So that's the goal of the Bridge Alliance. That's the goal of these conversations. And if you were to go to the Bridge Alliance website, you'd see an initial line that talks about one of their objectives, which is to attempt to fix the dysfunctional and suffocating partisanship of the current political system. Quite a bit of work, I might add. So today, as our guest, we have Manu Meel, who is with an organization called BridgeUSA, and they're part of the Bridge Alliance. And so Manu, first of all, thank you for joining us. And let me just ask you, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and the BridgeUSA, and what you hope to accomplish.
Thank you, David, so much for having me. Wonderful to sort of be speaking to a newer audience. My name is Manu, as David said. All the books in the back represent the bookshelves that I had to move out after graduating last May. Nowhere to put them, but that's sort of what the post-grad life looks like. I went to school at UC Berkeley in 2017, David, when I was a freshman, along with some amazing friends that have started to work with me and have been working with me on Bridge. There were these huge protests because the speaker by the name of Milo Yiannopoulos, who's a right-wing provocateur, came to campus, and everything went upside down. There was mass violence on campus. Parts of campuses were burned. And as a freshman, I was taking that all in, and I was like, gosh, there's two things that I noticed. I first noticed that young people are so hopeless about the current political situation. And second, that there's so much apathy because the political system seems to not be responding, as you sort of opened in the introduction. And the next day, we created just this listening space where anyone from any ideology could come. At that point, it was merely to restore the mental health of students. And that gradually shifted into an organization where we realized this isn't just a UC Berkeley problem. The problem of apathy, political division, polarization is endemic across the US and especially prevalent on campuses. And as young people who are going to be the future of our country and leading our democracy, it is not a great recipe for success when the next generation of young people only know dysfunction, polarization, tribalism as something that guides their political thinking. Bridge's job is to change that. It's to make young people more empathetic, more constructive, more solution-oriented, so that we can not only chart a better path forward, but we can abandon a lot of the division that is so afflicting the very nature of our country and hurting our civic fabric.
Well, I'd say those are very worthy goals. And by the way, not restricted to young people, but at the same time, Manu, I believe the goal of your organization is essentially to get younger people involved in the political process to make sure they become more aware and participate. So that's not a new objective. How are you going about that today?
It's not novel at all, but here's what's different. And that is that our fundamental belief is that the primary unit of democracy, the fundamental unit of our society, is people. People are we are the ones that vote at the ballot box. We are the users, we're the consumers, we're what drive innovation forward. And we're forgetting in this hyper polarized, very technical society that people are what need to be at the center of any decision we make. Our job is to make people, especially young people, more effective and constructive citizens. And the way we go about it is very simple. And I'm the first one to admit that it's not novel. What is novel is the way that we approach our politics. Think about green spaces in cities. You always think of green spaces as escapes from the urban environment that we live in. Our job is let's create civic spaces on campuses. Importantly, let's make sure that these civic spaces are led by students and they're for students. And they're peer-to-peer facilitated, organized spaces on campus that allow people to have three things. First, you meet someone you disagree with. Again, not a novel concept, but that's because our democracy is back to basics. Second, we get young people to engage in constructive ways and to listen. Again, not a novel concept, but our democracy is back to basics. And the third thing we do is we believe that the best antidote to polarization is humanization. You have to understand why I believe what I believe. What are my lived experiences? What are David's lived experiences? What inform you to think the way you're thinking? And then recognize that those experiences are just as valid as yours. And I think once we start to get over this hurdle that anyone that I disagree with is evil and not a human being, when we can overcome that concept, I think that it leads to profound transformation in society. And it sounds naive, it sounds optimistic, but it is the exact same countering violent extremism work that happens abroad. We do this in other countries, and we have to turn our attention back on our country. We have to understand our citizenry, and we have to understand what drives people. And that's what Bridge is about.
I guess it's fair to say I mean, good for you. I mean, the devil's in the details, right? So, you know, we are in a very polarized society, and your organization is attempting to get young people more involved, talking to one another more, increasing their understanding of one another. And yet everybody's coming at it already as very much from this perspective or very much from that perspective. So give us a few details, like how do you make it happen? Give us some examples of some success you've had. Maybe those of us who are no longer young or on college campuses might learn by some of the examples you share.
Let me take one challenge with your question, and that is that everybody's coming at it in this way. That's actually part of the problem. I've never met someone in the United States that we've talked to about bridge building and say that bridge building is a bad thing. Everyone is like, gosh, politics sucks. I engage politics in a constructive way. Why isn't everyone else doing it? And that's exactly what we're trying to change on campuses, is when you're a young person, the only voices that control the microphone, especially in politics and on our campuses and on social media, are those on the extreme. And that means that if the only people that you interact with and the only people you see are doing that, you assume that everyone else is also focused on extreme radical politics. And you think that then you've got to either change your beliefs or you've got to get out of the system. And our bet is that actually most young people, most students, most adults fall into that middle. And we've got to not only activate that middle, but we've got to get these people excited. And let me just say one thing about the middle. This is not the middle ideologically. This is a difference in how we approach politics. Most people exist on the political spectrum. Most organizations think about politics as being very strong left, being very strong right. You can have really strong beliefs on the left. You can also have very strong Republican beliefs. But where we operate is on the level of temperament. How are you actually expressing those beliefs? How are you engaging those beliefs? Are you following the research? Are you citing papers? Are you just attacking people? And so you can have a really strong partisan in Bridge, but still have them be someone in the middle. And so part of Bridge's objective is to reclaim what it means to be in the middle and to activate and emphasize that actually conversations, dialogue, and engagement is not just a naive exercise, it is essential to the bedrock of our democracy. And we're forgetting that. And the reason why we're forgetting that is because we don't recognize that people are what drive things forward, and we have to make sure that those people are better at the work that they're doing.
I think few of us would disagree with your premise. I recently had another conversation, and we were talking about, you know, how is it that people are coming at politics today and civil conversation from such extremes? And before your time, when I was your age, basically there were a handful of television stations, right? CBS, NBC, ABC, a few others. And so in order to attract an audience, they had to appeal to the middle, to the broad citizenry. Now with literally hundreds of opportunities to follow the news, if you will, you can choose you can be successful as a cable station with 2% of the audience. And so what people are doing is, instead of today I watch CNN, tomorrow Fox, the next day CBS, the next day NBC, and then you keep at it, they're just going back to the same one over and over again. And so whether on the left or whether on the right, they're getting the same story kind of cemented in their heads. What's your solution to promoting this greater discourse?
Let me tell you a story, and this kind of gets to your last question about successes. In 2019, we held this discussion, and oftentimes Bridge discussions are on local issues. They're about issues that matter to a specific campus, because that's when you can get really passionate people to show up. And that's when you can actually get the people that are affected by those discussions to show. So we partnered with an organization called Braver Angels, and we held a debate on homelessness. Homelessness is a big problem on Berkeley's campus. And specifically, there's this area near the campus called People's Park. And People's Park is this area where homeless folks have claimed it as their land and that no one can build on it. This dialogue invited homeless people from the city, invited students that wanted new housing, it invited administration officials, and it just had passionate advocates that were on the left in terms of city council. And that was a really contentious topic. And we put people that were affected by the issue, not just our own ideological bubble of centrists that often people think about, with hard advocates for student housing. And there was this one moment during that debate when the student stood up and he put on his Trump hat. And he was not only trying to make a political statement, but he was trying to get all of our folks to flip out the phone and get a media story, get a reaction. But what we had done before the debate was we'd laid out the norms really clearly. And what the homeless folks responded with and the people that were affected by that person was they not only engaged him, but they told him that if you've got something to say, you be here. If you don't have anything to say, you can keep standing, but we're going to continue the conversation. And so what that taught me, what that experience taught me is that people are invested in this enterprise for engagement dialogue. You just don't see it as much. And we have to elevate those instances. In response to your question about the media, I think social media is an even more exacerbatory factor on top of sort of the news stations that you're talking about. In theory, the idea that we have so many different perspectives, and in theory, the idea that any one of us can voice our opinion on the public square is a huge win in the context of human history. There's never been a moment in the history of our planet where people have been so connected. But the flip side of the coin, which you pointed out, is that we still haven't figured out how to utilize it to our advantage. And I think that Gen Z is uniquely equipped to actually address that challenge because we don't view social media as something that changes and shapes our life. We view social media as a tool that we can use to shape events. And that is a different mindset to adopt. Take TikTok, for example. They don't have any political advertising. We tried to advertise on the platform. They totally obfuscated the political question. And the way that now young people and high schoolers, and my brother, for example, the way that they use these media platforms is actually to just purely for that purpose. It's to just connect with friends, and it's to utilize a tool to maybe organize, but it's not to spread different ideas, different beliefs. And so I think that you're going to start to see a generational transformation where when the technology first comes in, it's disruptive, but I think we're going to start to recognize how to use it as a tool.
No, very, very well put, Manu. Manu, I understand that you want to expand your organization's reach to other campuses, and you have some events coming up. We only have a minute or so left. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'll be very quick. There's two initiatives that we're focused on, David. First is that Gen Z actually agrees on a lot more than it disagrees on, and specifically it agrees on these problems that need to be addressed. 3 problems: climate, democracy, economic mobility. Everyone in my generation believes that those issues need to have some sort of solutions. The disagreement is on what the solutions ought to be. The problem right now is that most people in our politics can't even agree on the problems. We're trying to get people to actually agree on the problems so that then we can have those debates that people think about back in Washington, the 90s and the early 2000s, where people would just debate about tax hikes and minimum wage. We're trying to get back to that reality of let's have conversations that focus on actual solutions and let's get everyone on the table. The Gen Roundtable, that's what describes this initiative. We have an event on March 17th that's focused on actually getting Gen Z around the country to agree and recognize these problems, so then we can propose solutions that can actually be debated. The second part of our organization, less event focused, more on the fact that we have to highlight voices of young people and elevate them that actually believe in bridge building. The problem that our broader field, the bridge building field, has is not a capacity problem, which is actually a much harder problem to solve. The problem that we have is that people don't believe that we'll succeed. And the only way you get people to believe that they succeed, that we can succeed, is by showing them that there's action happening and that they're on the winning side, that a lot of people are doing this. And so it's a very simple concept of demonstrating on a daily basis that here are students, here are adults, here are conservatives, here are Black folks, here are Latinx folks that are focused on bridge building. If you show people the work is happening, they're going to buy into it.
I hope you're right, and I
hope so too.
How can people, Manu, get involved with BridgeUSA? Either young people who want to get involved or folks who might want to donate to your cause?
If you're a young person right now, you're probably thinking, Zoom sucks. I've been on classes all day long. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I get you. But you're also probably thinking that politics sucks right now and I want to do something about it. How can you engage in a way that is novel, different, and not replicating the polarization of the Democrats and Republicans? Start a BridgeUSA chapter. You're not a squishy moderate centrist that's doing this enterprise. You can be a passionate liberal or a really passionate conservative. I'm a passionate liberal. We say it throughout our organization. Guess what? We've got a lot of passionate conservatives as well. If you're an adult and you're like, God, these kids are great, or you're thinking these kids are naive and optimistic, but you're like, you know what? They're on the right track. You can go to our website, you can donate, but more importantly, I want you to think about right now, think about one other person that you know in your life that's focused on bridge building and bring them into this broader movement. Because it's not just one organization that's going to fix the problem. It requires all of us and it requires our collective investment. And I think it is possible. Just really quickly, David, I know we're pushed on time. Recently, we launched Bridge Africa and Bridge Europe. Now, that was not our initiative. Students in Africa reached out to us. Students in Europe reached out to us. And they're utilizing the same techniques. And it works when you see it in action. The goal is, again, to show that it's happening because that's what people buy into. People buy into the hype. That's the reality of the situation. That's what a lot of presidents have focused on in the past couple of years as well.
Well, you're a very impressive young man. I will tell you that not everybody who's in the middle is squishy, but I think that was the word you used. But
well, that's part of reclaiming the middle. Is that the middle does not mean that you're squishy. The middle means that you just believe things, but you're not willing to go and break some windows in the process.
That you're probably true at that. Our guest today has been Manu Meel. Good luck to you with BridgeUSA, which is a member of the Bridge Alliance. And this is part of the conversations we've been having about repairing America's broken democracy. Manu, I think you're playing a role in that, and we wish you great luck going forward. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, David, for elevating our story.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.